Part 22. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Se Nian Bai. Chapter 211. This guy is a fox. I think it's called a long-eared fox, but it was originally from America. How come it came here? Su Ming said, while holding its long ears and shaking them again. The long-eared fox seemed to have given up resistance, and its head and limbs drooped helplessly, shaking a few times with Su Ming's shaking, and its long tail dragged under its body like a pendulum, swinging back and forth. The long-eared fox, also known as the fennec fox, is the smallest fox in the world. In other words, the smallest fox in the world. The typical feature is that its ears are particularly long. It is not a very rare species, but because it looks cute, it can be kept as a pet. Its main habitat is in Africa and America. So Su Ming was surprised, wondering why so many long-eared foxes appeared in this underground building complex. It's hard to say. There was trade between the Ming dynasty and the West in the Middle and Late Ming dynasty. Maybe it came from there. Zhao Yun couldn't give an accurate explanation, so he could only guess roughly. Because their companions were captured, the long-eared foxes that had been scared away gradually surrounded the site again, and their cries became more shrill, which sounded heart-wrenching. It is estimated that there are hundreds of them. No wonder the Yangtze alligator can live in the pool in front. The long-eared fox tribe in the ancient town next to it is probably its food source. Grey Fang and the three dogs roared at each other in the darkness, but their number was too small. With 4 against hundreds, their voices could not suppress each other at all. Uncle Zhao, don't be afraid. Su Ming suddenly said something inexplicable, and then took a deep breath. Zhao Yun was stunned. What am I afraid of? Then, Su Ming suddenly opened his mouth, his eyes wide, and roared into the darkness with a low roar. The sound was exactly the same as the roar of a tiger. The tiger is the king of beasts, and it is definitely not exaggerated. When a tiger roars in the mountains and forests, all beasts surrender. Startled by the tiger's roar, the foxes around them stopped barking, and the surroundings suddenly became quiet. You are good, you are so good at learning, Zhao Yun gave a thumbs up. If the Bengal tiger in the zoo was here, it would be so excited that tears would well up in its eyes. It taught Su Ming to learn the tiger's roar until its voice became hoarse. Now Su Ming can finally learn a few points of the truth. Although it is still far inferior to the real tiger, it is enough to scare the little foxes. Grey Fang and the three dogs were not scared by the fake tiger's roar. They bent their waists and rushed into the darkness again. Su Ming quickly stopped them. What a joke, so many foxes, relying on them to catch them one by one. It will take until New Year's Eve to catch them. I'll put you down, don't run. Su Ming shook the long-eared fox and put it on the ground. The long-eared fox didn't dare to leave. It raised its head and opened its small round eyes, looking at Su Ming in confusion. Su Ming took out a piece of beef jerky from his pocket and handed it over. The long-eared fox's eyes rolled around, and it came up carefully to smell it, then bit the beef jerky in one bite, pressed it on the ground with its 2 little paws, and lowered its head to chew it with relish. The 2 huskies had no hunter's dominance at all. They squatted on both sides of the long-eared fox, stretched out their tongues to please, and almost knelt down to lick it. They looked at the long-eared fox eagerly, wishing to say, "Give me some, give me some." Can you be more promising? Su Ming simply took out a few more large pieces of beef jerky and gave them to the husky and Labrador. Grey Fang didn't seem to be very interested in the beef jerky. He turned around and walked away after smelling it, lying on the side, staring at the 2 long ears of the long-eared fox with unfriendly eyes. These ears look delicious, and they are probably very chewy. The long-eared fox seemed to sense the danger, and its ears slid up and pressed tightly against its back. It raised its head and stared at Grey Fang with its 2 small eyes, showing its 2 rows of sharp little teeth. But even so, the long-eared fox did not forget to use its small claws to tightly protect the half-eaten beef jerky. Don't bite it, we are all family now, Su Ming secretly sent a mental force to Gray Fang. If he didn't remind him, Gray Fang might eat the long-eared fox one day. You know, they are a serious relationship between food and predator. Of course, the one with long ears is food. When the long-eared fox had almost eaten, Su Ming sent a mental force to it. The long-eared fox was very smart, or very cunning, and understood what Su Ming meant without any instructions from Su Ming. It first dug a small hole in the ground, buried the last bit of beef jerky in the hole, covered it tightly with soil, and then turned around and ran into the darkness to find its companions. These days, people are afraid of traitors. As long as there is a guide, there is no fortress that cannot be conquered. Not long after, the shouting around disappeared one after another. After a few minutes, large patches of light suddenly lit up in the dark long street ahead. Led by the long-eared fox before, a large group of long-eared foxes ran towards the side like a flood. The two huskies who were chewing beef jerky were startled and jumped up more than half a meter high. Gray Fang and the Labrador climbed up and blocked in front of Su Ming, staring at the large group of long-eared foxes running in front of them. Those long-eared foxes looked small, but they were also wild animals. Now their numbers were absolutely dominant and they were not to be trifled with. Each of them opened its mouth and showed its fangs to Gray Fang and Labrador in protest. "Don't shoot. We are all family." Su Ming quickly sent a large amount of mental power over, just like an invisible net, covering a large area at once, brainwashing all the long-eared foxes a little, letting them know that he was not hostile. Now Su Ming's mental power is strong, and it is not difficult to deal with a relatively weak but smart little guy like the long-eared fox. The expressions of the long-eared foxes affected by the mental power changed instantly, and the vigilant look gradually faded. They squinted their eyes and smiled, and the brave ones even wagged their tails and leaned towards Su Ming's feet. Zhao Yun's eyes were straight, staring at Su Ming as if he saw a ghost. How did you do it? The key is to have love. You have to give up racial prejudice, open your arms, let them feel that you love them, so that they will love you too," Su Ming said with a charlatan look. "Forget it." Zhao Yun also knew that this was Su Ming's family method of taming animals, so it was inconvenient to ask more questions, so he shrugged and said half-jokingly, "I love them, but your Aunt Zhao can take my life." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 212. This large group of foxes, after a quick count, there are probably nearly 200 of them. I don't understand why there are such a large family when there are usually only a dozen or so foxes in a group. Could it be that they have lived in this underground town for dozens of generations and have also multiplied into a large family? That doesn't make sense. If animals have been living underground, some of their characteristics will inevitably degenerate, but the foxes in front of me look quite normal. Maybe this is a difficult mystery to solve. Su Ming was too lazy to think too much. He bent down, took the first scary long-eared fox in red clothes and held it in his arms, tapped its wet little nose with his thumb, and said, "You will be their leader from now on. I'll give you a name. You have long ears, are very smart, and look like a thief. I'll call you Big Ear Thief." This long-eared fox didn't know what the Big Ear Thief was, but Su Ming called it that way, so it just listened, squinted its eyes and howled twice, which was considered an agreement. When the little guy doesn't scream deliberately, his voice is still quite nice, "Grandma." If he screams like he did just now, it will be terrifying. Even Su Ming almost peed when he first heard the scream. Zhao Yun was confused and laughed and said, "Why did you get so many foxes? Are you going home to stew them? Take them back to the zoo to raise them, or put them in the back mountain and let them hang out with the dogs. This underground monument will definitely be handed over to the country in the future. There is no point for Su Ming to keep it. Once the protective excavation begins, these foxes will definitely not be able to live here anymore. Take them back to the back mountain first. Anyway, it is also a wild environment. Su Ming rubbed the big ears of the big-eared thief and said, "If Cheng Cheng likes them, send her too to play with at home. She will definitely not be happy, but I'm afraid her mother won't agree." Zhao Qian is timid and afraid of these furry things. Zhao Yun smiled and said, "But if her mother sees these foxes, I can't say whether she will keep them or not. She will definitely ask to buy a fox fur coat again. That's not environmentally friendly. Next time I'll go to the zoo and pluck some feathers from the peacocks and make a peacock cloak for Aunt Zhao." The two joked a few times. Now there are no particularly dangerous things in the underground building complex, and they are both relaxed. Su Ming and Zhao Yun followed the fox group to explore several large houses. There were no particularly valuable cultural relics inside, and most of the furniture was rotten. There were also a few bottles and jars from the Ming and Qing dynasties. As Zhao Yun said before, this underground building complex may be just a residential area 100 years ago. Overall, it is a huge cultural treasure, and the Ming and Qing culture can be studied from it, but there are no particularly valuable individual cultural relics. Even if they both took it, they would probably only get something worth $1 million or so, which was not very meaningful. As a party member, Su Ming is now quite conscious. In this day and age, if you want to make money, have a future, and live comfortably, there are only 6 words: listen to the party and follow the party. Do not do anything that offends the party or the country. In addition to these, several bodies were found in some houses. They were all skeletons, and it was unknown whether they were male or female, old or young. Su Ming's heart moved slightly, and he poured out the things in his backpack, then put the bones into the backpack and returned to the edge of the pond. The Yangtze alligator was still lying obediently in the big pit. The group of foxes that followed and the crocodile enemy met, and they were particularly jealous. They scratched and scratched the crocodile. Crocodile skin is thick and hard, and bullets can hardly penetrate it, not to mention the claws of a few little foxes. They will definitely not be injured, but they are very annoyed when they are caught. Unfortunately, their big mouths are tightly tied with tape, and they can't move their bodies. They can only close their eyes in depression and pretend that nothing happened. They hide their heads and become turtles. Su Ming dug a big hole in the ground, poured all the bones in the backpack into it, and buried them with soil, clasping his hands together and praying. No matter who these corpses were before, since they are all dead, Su Ming doesn't want them to be seen as exhibits. Simply return to dust, and dig a hole to bury them. It can be regarded as a meeting after hundreds of years, a fate. As for whether they will be dug out by the experts in the future, it is none of his business. Just do your best and don't force it. Zhao Yun had almost finished his exploration over there. There were more than 60 houses from the Ming and Qing dynasties on 2 streets. Most of them were intact, but they had to be protected and repaired. Otherwise, it might not be long before a large-scale house collapse occurred here. It was a pity. The 3 were about to leave the cave, and let Su Ming climb out along the climbing rope first, and then hoist the crocodiles, foxes, etc. up. While packing the crocodiles, the big-eared thief jumped out of Su Ming's arms, bit Su Ming's trouser legs, and dragged him into the street. A large group of foxes also ran in the direction they came from. "What? Don't you want to follow me?" Su Ming asked with his mental power, and the big-eared thief seemed to want to go back to his home first. So many foxes live here, there must be caves. The so-called home is actually a fox cave. Su Ming laughed, thinking that it was not like humans moving house, and they had to take furniture with them. A fox cave, is there anything good that they are reluctant to leave? It's nothing more than some food. Okay, let's go home first. Su Ming was not in a hurry anyway, so he followed the big-eared thief into the long street. After walking a few dozen meters, he saw a stone monument more than 1 meter high standing between 2 houses. The foxes walked around the stone monument and disappeared. Su Ming followed and took a look. It turned out that there was a stone monument with a diameter of 4 or 5 meters behind it. The 10-centimeter hole is where the foxes got in. Zhao Yun also followed and was stunned. Hey, why didn't I see this hole just now? There is no light here, just rely on a flashlight, and the hole is behind the stone stele, so of course it is not easy to find. Moreover, as an archaeologist, Zhao Yun's first reaction when he saw the stone stele was to study the inscription, but he never expected that there was a big hole behind the stele. What is written on the stone tablet? Su Ming was semi-literate in this regard and asked, pointing to the traditional Chinese characters without punctuation on the stone tablet. It seems to be talking about the Battle of Poyang Lake, where Ming Taizhu Yuanzhang defeated Chen Yaoliang's 600,000-strong naval force, Zhao Yun said. Su Ming laughed. It seems that the tradition of flattering leaders in our country has a long history. A small village has dedicated a monument to flatter the emperor. It's a sin. It's better to flatter the county magistrate. As he spoke, the big-eared thief poked his head out of the hole with something in his mouth. After coming out of the hole, he spit out the thing from his mouth, held it with his 2 front paws, stood up, and offered the treasure. It seems to be dedicated to Su Ming. Su Ming wanted to pick it up, but unexpectedly, the big-eared thief hugged him and refused to give it away. He stared at Su Ming with his dark eyes. Su Ming was stunned for a few seconds before he understood and laughed. He ran out of beef jerky and took out an Aria sandwich biscuit and handed it to him. The big-eared thief opened his mouth and bit into the biscuit before taking the thing in his arms. Pass it to Su Ming. Su Ming took it and saw that the thing was round, black and covered with mud. He wiped it with his sleeve, and it turned out to be a pearl the size of a thumb. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 213. Pearls themselves are not that rare. A pearl the size of a thumb, even if it is in excellent condition, is actually not worth much. At least for Su Ming, the value is not too high. However, if it were a small village with dozens of households hundreds of years ago, it would be a treasure. Su Ming and Zhao Yun looked at each other and thought at the same time, could these foxes be thieves? They stole all the valuable things in the village and hid them in the foxholes? No wonder there is no valuables in such a big village, and all the emotions have been stolen by these big-eared thieves. This was really a mantis stalking a cicada, and the oriole came back again. Su Ming laughed, hugged the big-eared thief and kissed him hard. Zhao Yun was even more excited. He had already climbed down. He used a flashlight to shine and probe through the hole. Look inside. Did you see anything? As soon as Su Ming poked his head towards the entrance of the cave, the smell of fox hit his nostrils, causing the two of them to cover their noses and frown. By chance, another long-eared fox moved out of the house, this time with something flat in its mouth. Su Ming touched his pocket. It was over. There was nothing left to eat. Zhao Yun took the initiative to take out a box of chewing gum. After thinking about it, he felt it was inappropriate. He replaced it with a piece of instant noodles, opened a small piece and gave it to the new one. The fox came out and changed the thing it was holding. Zhao Yun quickly spit on a copper coin, wiped it vigorously a few times, and then used the light to take out a magnifying glass and stared at it carefully. While looking at it, he slowly recited, "Great righteousness, Tongbeo." The words printed on the copper coins are the reign names of the emperors who created the coins, such as Yongle Tongbeo, Qianlong Tongbeo, and so on. Hearing what Zhao Yun said, Su Ming couldn't help but laugh and said, "Dai Tongbeo? Uncle Zhao, are you mistaken? How could there be an era name called Dai in the Ming dynasty? There was no such year name in the Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties, right? Emperor Dai, this is the first time I've heard of it." Zhao Yun raised his head, carefully took out a sealed bag, put the copper coin into the bag, sealed the bag, and carefully put it into his backpack. After doing all this, he said, "That's because you are uneducated. Just because you haven't heard about it doesn't mean you don't have it." Is there really a righteous emperor? Su Ming held his mouth in disbelief. It can't be some Cao Wang rebel, the self-proclaimed Tu emperor. The title sounds like the Yelzi emperor. You were half right this time. This emperor is really self-proclaimed, but he is no ordinary Cao king. Zhao Yun pointed to the stone tablet next to him and said, "Does Chen Yaoliang know?" "Well, the 8th generation disciple of the beggar clan, the disciple of Cheng Kun, the one who almost killed Zhang Wuji." Okay, Uncle Zhao, please don't look at me like an illiterate person, okay. Chen Yaoliang, the one who almost killed Zhu Yuanzhang. At that time, the world was divided into 3 parts. He, Zhu Yuanzhang, Zhang Xishan, and Chen Yaoliang were the most powerful and established the Han dynasty, but what does it have to do with this righteousness? Dai is the first reign title of Chen Yaoliang. When he was named Dai, it was the time when Chen Yaoliang's military was at its peak and gaining momentum. Zhao Yun pointed to the fox cave and said, "I want to go down and have a look." "You are at the entrance of the cave, answer me." No, let's go down together." "Su Meng, you meet us at the entrance of the cave. You can't get in anyway with your size." Su Ming certainly couldn't miss such a fun thing. Besides, since this was a fox den, the foxes in it were all his own, so there was no danger. So the two put on simple gas masks, not because they were afraid of lack of oxygen. If the fox could survive inside, it meant there was enough oxygen down there. The main reason is that the smell of the fox cave is so bad. If you lie down outside the cave entrance, it will kill you. If you go down without a gas mask, you will probably be vomited directly. After making preparations, the two hung flashlights on the miners' hats above their heads, said "okay" in a dull voice, and then drilled in along the hole, one after the other. The entrance to the fox cave is like a slide, winding and diagonally leading downwards. The cave is very narrow. It is difficult to sit upright, let alone standing. Zhao Yun is in front, sitting on the ground with his buttocks, mostly lying in the cave. Holding the gun in his hand and pointing it diagonally downward, he moved downward little by little, with Su Ming following behind. After moving downward for about 7 or 8 meters, Zhao Yun called out, landed on his feet, straightened his body, got out of the cave and stood up. Su Ming followed closely. When he landed, Su Ming felt something was not right. "Ever since I came to this underground building complex, all the floors have been made of dirt. In an ancient small village, there was no money to lay tiles on the streets. Even the floors in most houses were made of solid dirt. But at this time, there was a hard feeling under the feet. Obviously the floor was paved with tiles." After shaking the flashlight twice to roughly see the surrounding environment, Su Ming and Zhao Yun were stunned. "In front of me, there is a stone room of more than 10 square meters, with floor tiles with fish and dragon patterns. The floor is clean, and there is no scene like fox excrement everywhere as imagined. In the center of the stone room is a stone platform about 1 meter high. On the stone platform, there is a 3-legged copper tripod. The cauldron was only about half a meter high, making it look very mini and a bit nondescript. It was as if a poor man wanted to make a fortune, but had no money, so he could only cut corners and make such a small tripod. It's so unserious. The tomb is a major event in life, how can you be so fooled?" Su Ming couldn't help but complained in his heart. Looking at both sides, there are 2 small side rooms that can be seen at a glance. There are various utensils piled inside. When the light is slightly shown, it is found that most of them are broken. It is estimated that the foxes broke them when they were playing here. And right in front of the stone chamber is an arched corridor about 3 meters high and 2 meters wide. The corridor is about 7 or 8 meters long. The wolf-tooth flashlight shines through the corridor and sees that there is another room inside. The whole picture cannot be seen clearly, but just looking through the corridor, there is a coffin placed opposite the corridor. Oh my god, it's really an ancient tomb. Su Ming was excited all of a sudden. His original purpose this time was to explore the ancient tomb. After coming down, he found that it was actually an ancient residential area. His enthusiasm was immediately reduced by more than half. If it weren't for the encounter with a large group of foxes and alligators, it would have been exciting. This trip would have been too boring. This person never expected that there was actually a tomb under this residential area. Although the small tripod was very frivolous and completely destroyed the solemn atmosphere of the ancient tomb, it was still a tomb after all. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 214. Although this tomb seems small and shabby, even the tripod is cut corners, but just from what you can see, it is definitely beyond the reach of ordinary rich people, not to mention, even if it is a mini tripod, then after all, he is still a tripod. Just because he is small, he cannot be regarded as a cotter. The tripod is an important weapon of the country. Even if it is a miniature mini cauldron, it is not something that ordinary people are qualified to use, let alone a prince. Either he is a self-proclaimed prince, or he is a poor prince, but he is definitely not an ordinary person. Several long-eared foxes ran out of the tomb chamber with various small things in their mouths. The tomb has a strong yin energy, which will attract animals such as weasels, foxes, and hedgehogs. It seems that the foxes use this tomb as a fox den to live in. Su Ming directly sent out a few bursts of mental power, asking these little guys to put down what they were holding. Zhao Yun threw the remaining instant noodles in front of them, and then led Su Ming to the mini tripod. Let's go see the coffin first. Su Ming couldn't wait to say, what's so good about a broken cauldron? A dead person in a coffin is exciting. Maybe he will find something valuable to be buried with him. Then he will discuss it with Zhao Yun and secretly keep 1 or 2 pieces without selling them. It would be nice to just keep the money and use it as family heirlooms. Zhao Yun, however, was much more steady. Don't worry, let's take a look at the inscription on the tripod first and find out who is buried here. After hearing what he said, Su Ming noticed that there were many densely packed small characters on the surface of the mini tripod, so he patiently squatted beside it and waited for Zhao Yun. The surface of the tripod was dirty and many words could not be read clearly. Zhao Yun took a small brush to brush the dust on it. Su Ming sniffed, opened his mouth, and prepared to spit a few mouthfuls and wipe it up. Zhao Yun was so frightened that he quickly stopped him, took out a bottle of mineral water and poured some on the surface of the tripod, then wiped it gently with his sleeves. Saliva is corrosive. This thing is a treasure. If it is broken, it will definitely be considered a national treasure, Zhao Yun explained half-jokingly, and then leaned on it with a magnifying glass to take a look. Su Ming couldn't understand the small characters, so he waited anxiously, so he simply ran to the ear rooms on both sides to have a look. The ear room is not big, 1 person high, about 2 or 3 square meters. There are several rows of broken pots and pots piled in the corner. The floor of the other ear room is scattered with some of the great righteous treasures just now, but not many. Probably there were dozens of coins, not even a gold or silver ingot, so he was really poor. Uncle Zhao, are you done? Fortunately, the time when this tripod was cast was not too old, and the words on it were not uncommon, at least not difficult for Zhao Yun. Zhao Yun nodded and was about to answer Su Ming when he saw that his face was a little pale, his legs were tightly together, and his body was slightly hunched and half leaning against the wall. He seemed to be in pain. Judging from the simple gas mask, in the past, Su Ming's little face wrinkled together. Zhao Yun was immediately shocked. What's going on? It's okay, I need to pee. When I saw the jars inside, I felt even more urgent to pee, but I couldn't bear to pee in the jars. They are all cultural relics. It would be bad if the country found out that I peed on cultural relics in the future, Su Ming, he said, twisting his legs. You won't urinate against the wall. After all, foxes lived here. When the archaeological team comes and finds out there is urination, the fox will be blamed. Pee quickly. After peeing, we will go to the tomb inside to take a look. Uncle Zhao, you are very bad, Su Ming chuckled and quickly turned to face the wall. While scoffing, Zhao Yun said from behind, it is clearly written on the tripod that this village is called Qinjiakan. It was secretly established by one of Chen Yaoliang's subordinates and will guard Chen Yaoliang's tomb for generations. Ah, Su Ming trembled, shook his body twice and felt relaxed. He zipped up and said, isn't that right? Chen Yaoliang's grave is under the Yangtze River Bridge. I even visited it when I passed by it that year. There is a legend that during the Battle of Poyang Lake, Zhu Yuanzhang did not find Chen Yaoliang's body in the end. Some said it was washed away by the water, and some said it was snatched away by his subordinates. In order to stabilize the morale of the army and the people, Zhu Yuanzhang built a tomb of Chen Yaoliang. Zhao Yun walked to the corridor and said, we'll find out when we go in and take a look. There won't be any agencies, right? Su Ming said suddenly. Well, it's always good to be careful, Zhao Yun nodded, took off his backpack, tied it with a rope, threw it hard to the other end of the corridor, and then slowly pulled it back. The backpack contained a lot of various equipment, and it weighed quite a lot, at least 20 kilograms. When Zhao Yun pulled it halfway, the ground in the middle of the corridor suddenly creaked and broke away, and there was a flap mechanism. The backpack fell immediately. Su Ming looked over and saw that his face turned green. Under the flap was a large pit as deep as one person, with densely packed swords inserted upside down. The foxes are small and light in weight, so walking on them will not touch the flaps. If two people walk on them rashly, it will not be fun to fall down. If it really kills you, that's it. If it doesn't kill you, if you break the balls and explode the anus or something, the rest of your life will be completely ruined. Go to the side, this kind of flip-up mechanism is very common in ancient tombs. Zhao Yun couldn't help it. He pointed to both sides of the corridor with great experience. The flap occupies 89/10 of the width of the corridor, and there is about half a foot of room on both sides for footing. So the two of them leaned against the wall of the corridor, moved forward little by little, and passed through the corridor safely. The tomb chamber inside was slightly larger than the outside one, with thick grass and dead branches on both sides. It might be that foxes moved in to make their home, but the whole tomb chamber seemed very empty, with only a coffin in the center. The outer coffin was rotten beyond recognition, and the coffin board had long been opened by the foxes while playing. When the flashlight was used to shine, the inside of the coffin was in a mess. The brocade quilt and other things that were originally used to wrap the body were rotten like a pile of mud, lying shallowly at the bottom of the coffin, and a small amount of funerary objects such as pearls and copper coins were scattered in it. Judging from the funerary objects in the coffin and various previous signs, this subordinate who guarded and repaired the tomb for Chen Yaoliang was not really rich. After the defeat of Chen Yaoliang's army, he could no longer produce any decent funerary objects. It was already the limit to be able to build such a large tomb. Some bones were scattered all over the coffin. Zhao Yun, wearing gloves, gently picked up half of the skull and blew a breath. He saw a finger-sized hole on the side of the skull. It should be correct. Chen Yaoliang died of an arrow in the head, Zhao Yun said excitedly. Su Ming was looking at the burial objects. He was sharp-eyed and saw a strange-shaped thing in the corner of the coffin. He picked it up and wiped it. It was a thumb-sized stone ball, which looked like a night-shining pearl, but it didn't glow. Another fake night-shining pearl, Su Ming laughed dumbly. If Chen Yaoliang were alive, he would probably be mad to death. The burial objects in this tomb were all inferior products made with shoddy workmanship. However, the surface of this night shining pearl was covered with dark red stripes. Su Ming was thinking, why not keep this night shining pearl as a souvenir? Anyway, it doesn't look worth much. Before he could discuss it with Zhao Yun, a very familiar feeling came from the night shining pearl, as if a strange power suddenly drilled into his body. This feeling is very similar to when he first discovered the ability of animal friends. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 215. It was too late, but it was so fast. It only took a moment. After the power entered the body, the blood-red stripes on the night pearl quickly faded and disappeared, as if they had never appeared. Zhao Yun carefully put Chen Yaoliang's head, which had a hole in his hand, back into the coffin. When he turned around, he saw Su Ming holding a piece of luminous pearl in a daze. He pushed Su Ming and said, "Have you been possessed by evil?" "Oh. No, no." Su Ming looked down at the luminous pearl in his hand. The dark red stripes on it had disappeared. He took the luminous pearl and asked Zhao Yun, "Uncle Zhao, what is this? It looks like a luminous pearl, but it's not bright either." "Light night pearl?" Many of the ancient night light pearls were fluorite, and their value is not very high. It is normal for them to fade away after hundreds of years. Zhao Yun took the light night pearl, looked at it, and said, "Well, it's fluorite." Su Ming had seen fluorite before. Among the souvenirs sold in the Tingfeng Pavilion next to Shuahun Lake in the zoo were 2 pieces of fluorite, the size of a table tennis ball. They were priced at 5,000 and had been there for 3 years. No one will buy more. However, ordinary fluorite does not have the energy contained in this night pearl. Su Ming thought for a while and said directly, "Uncle Zhao, I want to keep this stone." Zhao Yun looked at Su Ming and smiled, "Let me remind you, things on dead people are unlucky. Besides, they are not worth much money." Su Ming said, "Just keep it for fun." Zhao Yun is not that old-fashioned and unsophisticated. Besides, if Su Ming had not notified him at the beginning, but came down to excavate this underground ruins by himself, he would have taken whatever he wanted from it. Thinking of this, Zhao Yun simply turned his head, pretending to study the patterns on the coffin, and said to himself, "I don't see any luminous pearls here." Su Ming also smiled and put the luminous pearl into his pocket. The energy inside has been absorbed. For Su Ming, the greatest value of this non-luminous night pearl no longer exists. The reason why he wanted this piece of jade was not because he wanted to sell it, but because the energy in this piece of jade was very special. After absorbing it, he discovered that this energy did not enhance mental power, but added a new function to the ability of animal friends based on mental power. You can attach your mental power to an animal and experience what the animal sees and hears. Every time you use it, a certain amount of mental power will be consumed. The more animals are attached and the farther they are from you, the more energy you will consume. The force will be greater. He couldn't explain why, but as soon as the energy in the jade entered his body, he clearly discovered the effect of this energy. Su Ming couldn't help but guess that maybe the original ability of Animal Friends was not complete and was just a basic version. Therefore, although the energy in the night pearl has been absorbed, he still wants to keep it for study. While Zhao Yun was studying the coffin, Su Ming quietly attached a spiritual power to a long-eared fox. I go. The whole world is completely different. There are 2 giant-like guys in front of me. Aren't they himself and Zhao Yun? There were various strange and subtle sounds coming from the big ears, and there seemed to be ants crawling around in the soil under my feet. Suddenly I became very eager to eat ants. Even though I felt ashamed to eat ants, I still couldn't help but dig up the ants with my hands. The hands also became very strange, they were furry and fleshy, with several sharp little claws hidden in the fleshy palms. At the same time, there is also a little fox's own consciousness, which has a very strange feeling. "It's me." Su Ming quickly sent a message to the long-eared fox's own consciousness. The little long-eared fox would not think about issues such as its own self-spiritual power. Once it was confirmed that it was Su-ming, it was very difficult. Obediently, he dug into the ground with his little paws. After digging a few times, he finally found a few ants. Su-ming swallowed and stretched out his tender tongue to lick them. It's delicious. Su-ming and the little fox felt a sense of satisfaction and shame at the same time. The two completely different feelings made him feel conflicted in an instant. At this moment, Zhao Yun pushed Su-ming's arm and heard a voice in his ear, "Why are you dazing again? It's almost time for us to go out. This feeling is so weird, as if I have a clone." My own body and the mental power attached to the little fox are both aware at the same time. Su-ming quickly withdrew his mental power from the little fox and responded as if nothing was wrong. So the two of them left the tomb, climbed out along the original path of the foxhole, and called the long-eared foxes who had just moved, and asked them to put back all the copper coins, pearls, etc. they had moved out of the tomb. The things were worthless and of no use to the foxes. When he returned to the first water pool, Su-ming couldn't help but try it on the alligator. "I can't see anything." Su-ming suddenly saw a blurry area in front of his eyes. The dogs that were clearly close at hand were just a few moving shadows in his eyes. However, if he looked up and looked out of the hole above his head, it was already dawn, and we could actually clearly see the birds flying hundreds of meters high, down to the feathers clearly. Then I remembered that the visual imaging of crocodiles is different from that of humans. Crocodiles are short-sighted in the water, but on the shore, crocodiles seem to be far-sighted. But he could hear it very clearly, as if his hearing was better than that of long-eared foxes with big ears. In view of the characteristics of this ability, Su-ming gave it a name, soul possession. Zhao Yun was right beside him, so Su-ming didn't dare to play any more, fearing that he would miss the trap. So he took back his mental power from the alligator, and let Su-ming climb up along the rope first, and then Zhao Yun. He finally stayed in the cave, squatted in front of the alligator, and sent a mental message, asking, "Old alligator, do you want to live alone in the mountains, or come back with me?" The alligator was beaten all over, and the key may be that its self-esteem was hurt. Although it could no longer move around, it resisted in a silent way. It ignored Su-ming. "Come back with me to heal your wounds first. You are a lonely fish. Besides, the foxes are gone, and you have nothing to eat here. You will starve to death sooner or later. Go back to the zoo and live for a while. If you want to leave in the future, I will find a reason to put you in the back mountain." As Su-ming said, he tied the climbing rope around the old crocodile several times, and then whistled at the cave entrance. Su-ming stood on it and pulled the rope, slowly pulling the alligator out of the cave entrance. The hole is only 40–50 centimeters in diameter. Fortunately, the Chinese alligator is relatively small. If it were a Nile crocodile, it might have gotten stuck in the hole. 2 more chapters to go. Come on. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 216. After the alligator went out, the foxes followed him. Su-ming asked Zhao Yun to empty his and his 2 large backpacks, and then put 4 or 5 foxes in the bags at a time and hang them up. The little foxes were next to each other, fluffy and crowded in the big bag. They were lying on the edge of the bag, rising upwards and looking around curiously. They probably didn't understand why they suddenly started to float. The guy also grinned, showing his small pointed teeth, and the corners of his mouth were curved to both sides. It looked like he was smiling, which was very interesting. After working for more than an hour to hoist all the foxes up, Su-ming was already exhausted, so he asked Zhao Yun to throw a Snickers bar down and eat a few mouthfuls before regaining some strength and finally put the climbing rope on. He fixed it on his waist, gestured a thumbs up, and was pulled up bit by Su Meng. Damn it, I finally came out. I didn't feel it inside the cave, but after I came out, I immediately exhaled a breath of stale breath, and the surrounding air became extremely fresh. Outside the cave, there were densely packed foxes all around, looking up at Su Meng. Big-eared thief, take your men and follow me. The long-eared fox's home will soon be discovered under national protection. They have nowhere to go for the time being. Let's go back with the dogs first. Let's stay in the Huishan Reserve. Anyway, there are hundreds of foxes on such a large mountain. It's no problem. With a wave of his hand, the army of foxes rushed down the hillside in a mighty manner, as if the mercury was pouring down the ground. As for the old crocodile, he is still a dangerous guy, and he cannot be loosened. He just untied the ropes tied to his limbs, and his mouth remains the same. It was wrapped layer by layer with tape, and Su Meng was asked to put it directly on his shoulders, as if he was carrying a big sack. A group of people and animals walked out of the deep mountains and old forests in a mighty manner. When they were about to leave the mountains, Su Meng stopped and said to Zhao Yun, "Uncle Zhao, I will settle the foxes first, and I will not go back with you." "Okay, then after I go back, I will report the news about the tombs and underground buildings to the relevant departments." Zhao Yun smiled and patted Su Meng on the shoulder and said, "This time you have made a meritorious service, and I guess you have to accept it again." Interview. Your kid is on TV more frequently than our mayor. Uncle Zhao, I was just about to tell you that when you report to the court this time, it's best not to say too much about me. Even if you have to mention it, try to downplay my presence. Zhao Yun said unexpectedly, "Why is this? You are a hero. Such a large building complex and Chen Yaoliang's tomb are a major discovery in the archaeological world. If you are reported together, there will definitely be rewards. If you publicize it again, gain both fame and fortune. Hee, if there is a bonus, you can keep it, even if it is the lucky money I gave Cheng Cheng during the Chinese New Year. I just don't want this reputation." Su Meng shook his head and said calmly, "I have been in the limelight too much in the past 6 months. As you said, I appear on TV and in newspapers every now and then. Now that I have the fame I deserve, I want to calm down for a while. Time. Otherwise, being too pushy is not a good thing." When Zhao Yun heard what he said, he showed a surprised expression at first, but then he nodded, patted Su Meng's shoulder with great approval, and said, "Young people know how to keep a low profile and bide their time. It's rare. Like this. Okay, well, let me handle the rest of the matter. The leaders will definitely know about your existence, but try not to mention you during publicity. This way, you will get credit for your contribution, and it won't be too big. Attract attention." Zhao Yun is almost 20 years older than Su Meng, but the two of them can get along as friends. This is largely because Su Meng is young and can be quite nonsensical at times, but when it comes to doing business and critical matters, he is often better than him. People of the same age generally appear more mature, so overall, the generation gap is small. At this point, Zhao Yun seemed to see himself when he was young. "Hey, Uncle Zhao, I have to be at ease when you do things," Su Meng said with a smile. He left this kind of thing to Zhao Yun. He was really at ease. This old handsome guy is almost a perfect middle-aged man. He has a family and a career. There is nothing he can't do well in socializing in public and in private relationships. After parting ways with Zhao Yun at an intersection, Su Meng took the gray fang foxes and walked toward the hillside where the kennels were originally built for the dogs. As he walked, he couldn't help but attach his spiritual power to a husky. Suddenly I just felt extremely happy. I felt so happy for no reason. I didn't know why. I was very happy when I saw the pebbles, the flying birds, the blooming flowers, the foxes, everything, in the eyes of the husky, was its fun. The only thing I can't stand is my nose. My sense of smell is so sensitive that I can smell the poop of some unknown animal from dozens of meters away. What's even more frightening is that there is even a desire to run over and have a taste. Mud. Tried Grey Tooth again. Is this what Ximenchewixu feels like? The moment he attached himself to Huaya, his whole person seemed to suddenly become cold, arrogant. He didn't pay attention to anything and despised all living things except Su Ming. It was completely the style of Long Aotian, the protagonist of the online novel 10 years ago. Only Su Ming seemed immune to this ability. After all, he was a human being, not an animal. However, Su Ming felt that there was also a possibility that his mental power was not strong enough, or that there were other undiscovered patches in the abilities of animal friends, and he might be able to control people one day. After all, using mental power to communicate with Su Ming is not as effective as communicating with animals, but it still has some effects. Just playing and walking along the way, Su Ming gradually became familiar with the ability of soul attachment. After soul attachment, mental power will be consumed little by little, and mental power will also be consumed if the distance is too far, but with his current mental power level, this consumption is still within the acceptable range. At the same time, it is best not to use this ability frequently, otherwise it is easy to make people schizophrenic. What if you are not careful and think you are a dog or a crocodile when you are dealing with people? Then it will be fun. For example, when talking to Xiao Hu and Xiao Liao, the nurses in the medical center suddenly rub against them. No, I am becoming more and more beastly. Does the friends of animals want to turn a pure and kind boy like me into a big beast? However, it is indeed fun and very practical. In the past, animals like Ergoza were sent to do things and keep an eye on things. Their intelligence was not high and they could only simply describe what happened. But after soul attachment, you can see and hear it in person, which is much more accurate than the information conveyed by animals. It didn't take long to reach the destination. There were dozens of dog kennels of various sizes built on the flat hillside. Although the dogs basically don't live here now and only come back occasionally, Laolin and Xiaolin still send some food regularly to take care of them. Now it seems that it was absolutely right to protect the uncle and nephew. They are indeed honest people. After being moved to the zoo, there are only the two of them in the back mountain. Su Ming doesn't come here often, but they still work diligently here every day without any slacking. Xiaolin is on duty today. He saw Su Ming from a distance and came to meet him. Brother Su, where did you catch so many rabbits? If you are free, let's roast rabbits. Xiaolin probably hasn't seen a fox with such big ears. He thought it was a rabbit. He grabbed the big-eared thief's ears, lifted it up and shook it, and said strangely, "Hey, is this a fox? Let go, it hurts." Su Ming suddenly shouted. He was attached to the big-eared thief and could feel the animal's feelings at the same time. Of course, he will not be hurt. Even if the possessed animal is injured or even dies, his body will not be hurt in the same way, but the feeling will be transmitted back synchronously. The ear of the big-eared thief was pulled, and he was also in pain. Xiaolin held the ear of the big-eared thief and looked at Su Ming blankly. Su Ming took back his mental power, took the big-eared thief from Xiaolin's hand, and held him in his arms. The big-eared thief was frightened by Xiaolin, and his ears trembled. Su Ming laughed and touched the head of the big-eared thief. "Touch the fur, it won't scare you." After that, he said to Xiaolin, "I rescued these foxes, and they live on this hill for the time being. Go back and tell Laolin." In folklore, foxes, hedgehogs, and weasels are all great immortals and spiritual animals. If you see them at home, you must not offend them. Hearing Su Ming say this, Xiaolin was surprised and said, "Brother Su, raising so many foxes is not auspicious." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 217. Old Lin Xiaolin will help take care of the foxes in the future. Maybe Miss Red Fox, the neighbor of the Wolf King in the zoo, will also move here. If his uncle and nephew are always afraid of foxes, it will not be conducive to getting along in the future. It's okay, they are all obedient. Come and say hello to Xiaolin. Su-ming snapped his fingers. The dozen or so big-eared foxes at the front stood up, clasped their fists with their two small front paws, and bowed to Xiaolin. Oh my god, I can't afford to be worshipped by so many fox gods. Xiaolin has been accustomed to Laolin's feudal superstitions since he was a child. He was so frightened that he sat on the ground and quickly clasped his hands and bowed back to the fox several times. Foxes have a natural tendency to imitate other animals. Some small rural temples have legends about the great fox immortal. Because of foxes, weasels and the like, when they saw the clay-embodied bodhisattvas sitting motionless in the temple, they followed suit and climbed onto the table. Imitate the appearance of a bodhisattva. Xiaolin bowed like this, and the dozens of big-eared foxes that saw him in front also imitated Xiaolin and bowed to him. Hundreds of big-eared foxes appeared one after another, and the scene was quite funny. Okay, everyone, get up. Su-ming happened to be standing in the middle of the two sides, and a large group of filial sons and grandsons knelt down to worship him. He seemed to be dying, and he quickly sent out a burst of mental power to let the big-eared foxes get up first. And then helped Xiaolin up again. Xiaolin got up, dusted off his knees, and gave Su-ming a thumbs up in shock, saying, "Brother Su, I'm convinced. So many great fox immortals are listening to you. You are the reincarnation of the Bodhisattva." Xiaolin, your flattery is quite blunt. Su-ming laughed. Go and tell Laolin to take care of these foxes in the future. Okay, I'll go right away. Xiaolin turned around and walked down the mountain. When he passed by a large group of foxes, he specially bowed to the foxes with his hands clasped together. Whoops, this attracted a large group of big-eared foxes to bow to him again. You might as well become a monk. I'll build you a small temple in the back mountains. Su-ming chuckled. After sending Xiaolin away, Su-ming said hello to Huiya. Huiya raised his head and let out a long wolf howl into the sky. Not long after, dozens of dogs came back from all directions. Seeing the group of foxes, the dogs were as happy as if they were getting ready for dinner. The foxes were all frightened. Dogs and wolves were originally the natural enemies of foxes. Facing Grey Fang and them in the burrow, they still had a slight numerical advantage. But now, even the numerical advantage was completely non-existent. They were surrounded by more than 80 dogs of various kinds, running around. There was nowhere to run to. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Almost 200 little foxes let out pitiful cries, their big ears trembling with fear, and they were all squeezed together tightly. The foxes are also extremely smart. They just learned how to bow, and they immediately put it to use. The dozens of foxes on the outside bowed to the dogs around them, and they all looked pitiful, almost speechless. Don't eat me, don't eat me. Although Su-ming is a friend of animals, he never interferes with the food chain. Wolves, dogs, and crocodiles eat foxes, foxes eat birds, and birds eat insects. This is the law of nature. Just because you can control animals, you cannot force them to stop eating meat and become vegetarians. But then again, everything is divided into distance and distance. When it comes to animals, Su-ming's consistent principle is don't harm those you know, and don't let those you know hurt each other. Besides, these mountains are so big and there is so much food. Laolin and the others often bring food to them, so there is absolutely no need to eat your own people. Tell me about it. Su-ming stepped on the roof of a large kennel and said loudly. As soon as he finished speaking, all the dogs shuddered like soldiers who had heard their commander call for relief. They all squatted on the spot, sticking out their tongues and looking at Su-ming with their heads held high. Yes, the fox and you will be neighbors from now on. If you want to love each other, you can love each other. If you don't want to, it doesn't matter if you each play your own way. There are only two. First, don't kill each other. Second, if there are foreign animals bullying, we all need to go up and help. After finishing speaking, he waved to Grey Fang, come and set an example for them. Grey Fang couldn't even look down on a dog, let alone a fox. It dragged its tail and reluctantly walked up to the big-eared thief, staring at it with a cold expression for a while, which frightened the big-eared thief so much that his hair stood up. Then Grey Fang suddenly raised his head. With his right front leg, he slapped the big-eared thief twice on the head with his wolf paw, which seemed to mean, from now on, I will protect you. He Su Meng giggled on the side, then raised his hand and patted Huiya twice on the head. Grey Fang turned his head this way and that in annoyance. After returning to the zoo, within a few days, news broke that Chen Yaoliang's tomb and underground complex had been discovered in Yangchuan City. Although Chen Yaoliang is just a grass-headed king, he is so well known in history that he can be compared with Zhu Yuanzhang. Although there are no national treasure-level cultural relics in his tomb, the historical and cultural value is very high. What's more, there is not only Chen Yaoliang's tomb here, but also a large area of Ming Dynasty buildings. This is a truly rare discovery and is more valuable than ordinary princes' tombs. Therefore, the country attaches great importance to it. The museum director Zhao Yun and a large group of people came from all over the country to discover the tomb. Experts came and began to conduct protective excavations here. During this period, both Zhao Yun and Wang Jianxi called each other and talked about several things. The first is that Su Ming specifically reminded him. Zhao Yun only briefly mentioned Su Ming in the report, and reached a tacit understanding with relevant leaders and experts not to report on Su Ming specifically. But no matter what, Su Ming has made contributions, and the authorities have issued a bonus of 50,000 yuan to Zhao Yun and Su Ming. The government's rewards have always been small, but the gold content is not small. Zhao Yun and Su Ming don't care about this little money, so they just donate it to the zoo. Second, it is said that after the excavation and archaeological project of this building complex is completed in the future, the government may prepare to build it into a scenic spot similar to the Terracotta Warriors. Of course, the scale is not as large as the Terracotta Warriors. This is inside news, which has not been announced yet, because it is unknown what the final excavation will be like. Zhao Yun and Wang Jianxi both knew it in advance, because the location of the underground building complex is very close to the back mountain of the zoo, which belongs to the garden area management, and Zhao Yun is a nationally renowned archaeological expert. If it can really be built into a tourist attraction in the future, it may be jointly managed by Zhao Yun's museum and the zoo. Third, it is a very unexpected good news. The land for the winery is likely to be settled, and the location is quite good. It is not as good as the one next to the reservoir, but it is much better than the selected lands that were reserved before. P.S. Of course, it still does not occupy the subscription word count. 10 chapters are completed. I can't believe it myself, I actually did it. Although it is a farming novel, I am also a man, so I should have such a fierce energy. In the next few days, let's follow the normal speed, let me breathe a sigh of relief for the commemorative coins, and let me save up manuscripts. The average subscription is estimated to reach 1,500 soon, and then there will still be 10 chapters. Although I also want to write 10 chapters every day, if my body collapses, then forget it. It's almost dawn, I'm exhausted, but I'm in good spirits. Watching the background data increase little by little, the whole person is full of strength. Everyone has a dream. Since I write a book, I also have some small ambitions. This book is doing well at present. There won't be too many opportunities in life. The opportunity is right in front of me. If I can't catch it, it's my own failure, and I can't blame anyone. Commemorative Coin is not a very talented writer, and I didn't have any foundation before. I can only rely on working harder than others to give back everyone's support and get closer to my dream little by little. 4 days after the release, 4 updates in 2 days, 10 updates in 2 days. Of course, it will not always be so exaggerated in the future, but frequent updates and bursts are still possible. Let's join hands and create a miracle together. I believe that an average subscription of 1,500 or 2,000 is by no means the end. Finally, it's still the old 3 sentences: please subscribe, please recommend, and reward, please everything. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 218. At first, Zhao Yun selected several plots of land for building a winery, but the location was not ideal. Either they were too far from the zoo and Su Ming could not take care of them, or the price of the land was too high and he could not afford it. After discovering Chen Yaoliang's tomb in the back mountain this time, a piece of land about 4 or 5 kilometers away from the tomb, embedded in the middle of the mountain, suddenly became vacant. This piece of land is about several dozen acres, and is also embedded in the middle of the mountain, facing the location of Chen Yaoliang's tomb. It is still a wasteland now. It was originally intended to be used as residential land and sold to build a luxury villa complex in the middle of the mountain. But now, the ancient tomb has been discovered a few kilometers away, and this piece of land is obviously not suitable for building villas for living. If it is in the city, 4 or 5 kilometers is a long distance, and there are large residential areas within 5 kilometers of the crematorium, so it is not a problem. But in the mountains, 4 or 5 kilometers seems very short. When the weather is good, you can almost see the opposite side at a glance. Who would spend a lot of money to buy a villa so that they can see a dead person's tomb on the distant hillside every day when they open their eyes? Isn't it bad luck to look for it? Besides, those who can buy villas are all rich people, either doing business or being officials. Such people are most particular about good luck. So this piece of land cannot be used for residential purposes. The Municipal Construction Committee and several other government departments have discussed whether to change the purpose of this piece of land. Zhao Yun plans to blow the wind behind the scenes and find connections to see if it can be turned into an industrial site, so that it can be used as a winery. After hearing about it, Su Ming also called Wang Jianxi, hoping that he could help and add fuel to the fire. The land approval was not originally under the jurisdiction of Wang Jianxi, but this piece of land is in the mountains, and Wang Jianxi, the leader in charge of agriculture, forestry, and fishery, can have a say in it. Well, this. Wang Jianxi pondered for a moment and said on the other end of the phone, "It's not a big problem. I'll try my best." "Oh, Wang Hao came back yesterday. Did you call him?" "I got his call. I plan to invite him out for dinner in 2 days and talk about the company's affairs in the future." Su Ming laughed. Wang Hao is a source of worry for Wang Jianxi. He is lazy all day long. Wang Jianxi is afraid that he will cause trouble, but he really works hard at work, and Wang Jianxi is worried about his son's health. Even if there is no relationship with Wang Jianxi, Su Ming does not want him to get sick because of the friendship between Su Ming and Wang Hao. Now it is just right to let Wang Hao come to work with him, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, that is, to solve Wang Jianxi's worries and to complete the friendship between friends and brothers. In fact, it is killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Su Ming's subordinates are also short of capable people. After more than half a year of training, Wang Hao has the ability and is familiar with all aspects of the government, just in time to help him. After a few busy days, the old Monkey King has not had time to go to the back mountain to brew new monkey wine, and the new year is coming soon. Su Ming is going to go home for the new year. On the surface, everything seems to be going smoothly in the past few months, but in fact, many sinister things have happened that only Su Ming himself understands. Now that his small business has finally made some progress and he can gain a foothold in Yangchuan City, it is time to go home to see his mother, and it would be best to bring his mother to Yangchuan City. The zoo will be closed for 7 days during the new year, and he will take 2 more weeks, a total of 20 days of vacation. Before leaving, the zoo still has things to deal with at the end of the year. This year's year-end bonus is outrageous. The zoo's ticket revenue alone is nearly twice that of previous years. The employees help Su Ming do this and that, and the extra money they make is much higher than their regular salary. When Sister Tong was drafting the year-end bonus distribution, Su Ming simply carried forward his style and took the initiative to take the smallest share, just 1,000 yuan for the sake of appearance. Okay, you don't care about that little money now anyway. Sister Tong closed the office door after distributing the year-end bonus. Xiao Su, I have something to discuss with you. Ah, Su Ming was stunned. It's not another introduction, is it? It's true, but it's not for Su Ming. Sister Tong asked, your cousin, Su Ming, except for not speaking very fluently, there is nothing wrong with him, right? As she said, she pointed to her temple. Nothing wrong, but his family is poor, Su Ming said. Hey, no matter how poor, if he works with you for 2 years, he will have everything. Sister Tong is a wise person. She whispered to Su Ming, my distant niece Xiao Hu, probably fell in love with Su Ming. Su Ming laughed in his heart and thought, I knew it. It seems that the big and strong nurse Xiao Hu also likes big and strong men. She is not my type, and I am not her type. Just chase her if you like her. Su Ming is easy to get along with. Su Ming also hopes that Su Ming can have a family or something. Since he has come to live in the world, it is not good to be alone all the time. Besides, he will also have a family in the future. What will happen to Su Ming then? He can't live with him for the rest of his life, right? That's why I asked you, is there any problem with him here? Sister Tong said mysteriously, I tell you, you know Xiao Hu, she is an extrovert, not like some girls who are shy, but Su Ming doesn't seem to understand her at all. No way. Don't you like Xiao Hu? Su Ming asked. Su Ming still has some difficulty speaking now, but he can basically understand what others say, and can handle some normal interpersonal interactions. Sometimes he will smile foolishly, that's because he is simple at heart, not really stupid. Then I have to talk about you, Sister Tong said. Xiao Hu doesn't even dislike your brother for being mute, but he dislikes Xiao Hu instead. I tell you, it's not easy to find a girl as good as Xiao Hu. Su Ming slapped his forehead and thought, big sister, your logic is wrong. Su Ming doesn't like her. Why are you talking about me? Big sister Tong continued, do you think my little Hu is too strong? Hey, women should be strong and fertile. Big sister, relying on her age, will say something shameless to you. With Su Ming's physique, how can ordinary girls stand him? Su Ming was completely stunned by the unrestrainedness of the married woman. He said with a stiff face, well, can't I go and ask him what he means? That's right. Su Ming is a kid who can't be beaten with 3 sticks. Don't delay Xiao Hu anymore. She's 25 years old this year. After Big Sister Tong finished speaking, Su Ming carried 2 bottles of wine and 2 packs of cigarettes to Mingkingju, where Master Peng was. Among the older generation of employees in the zoo, Master Peng was the first to bring Su Ming with him, and he was also the one with the best relationship with Su Ming. It is probably because of this reason that now that Su Ming has become rich, Master Peng has become the big brother among the old employees of the zoo. I know you are busy, but if you have this heart, I will not teach you in vain. He, speaking of it, you have been more capable than me for a long time. Master Peng cooked a few dishes and chatted with Su Ming while drinking. Master, where are you spending the new year? Su Ming asked. Su Ming knew the situation of Master Peng's family. His wife died early, leaving only a daughter who was studying in another place. It was unknown whether she would come back for the new year. This year, the daughter will go home, and I will go home. Master Peng's face was shining when he talked about his daughter. His daughter had very good grades in school and often received scholarships. In the past, she worked part-time to support her studies because her conditions were poor. Now Master Peng is in charge of the cruise ship and feed. With better conditions, she doesn't have to work so hard. After raising his glass and walking with Su Ming, Master Peng put down his glass and said, "Su, I want to discuss something with you. My daughter will graduate soon after the Chinese New Year. Can you help her find a job?" As a former graduate, Su Ming knew too well how difficult it was to find a job. Sometimes it's not true that you can find a good job just because you have good grades. Besides, Master Peng is old, and he wants his daughter to stay in Yangchuan City in the future. As a zoo manager, he doesn't have any connections, so it's not easy to find a good job for his daughter. I have really thought about it, but I am afraid of giving in. Su Ming also squinted his glass of wine and said, "I am going to open a small winery soon. I am in need of an accountant. Your daughter is studying this. If you are willing, come to my place and work first. But the winery is not big, and there are probably no more than a few dozen people." "That's great. I feel relieved to work with you. You know, society is too chaotic now. My girl looks like a fairy, and I am afraid that she will suffer." "That's right, don't worry, come to me. I dare not say anything else, but you will definitely not suffer." Su Ming held back his laughter. Master Peng is a good person in everything, but he likes to brag about his daughter. Once he drinks too much, he can use all kinds of exaggerated adjectives to describe his daughter. Su Ming has also seen his daughter's old photos. She is not ugly, but she doesn't seem to be a fairy either. She just has regular facial features. After drinking with Master Peng all night, Liang Shi was given a day off the next day. "There is not much money left in the account now, so I gave him 40,000 yuan, which is considered to be a way for him to go home for the New Year first. I went to Director Song's house again. The old man was indeed old. He sat in the living room and chatted. He fell asleep while talking. Su Ming did not disturb him. He left a gift, said hello to his family and left. I said, 'You look a little off.' Su Ming hadn't seen Wang Hao for a long time. He was shocked when they met. Fatty Wang's face was full of black hair, like a dying person. 'It's almost the New Year, stop cursing me.' Wang Hao rolled his eyes. 'I went out with our leader last night. Damn, the old pervert had fun by himself, and he had to find two for me. You said I'm so fat now, how can I handle two?' 'You are still in pain when you say that,' Su Ming said. 'That's necessary. It's torture. If this goes on, I will vomit when I see delicacies and I will be lewd when I see beautiful women. My whole life will be ruined,' Fatty Wang said with a headache. 'Damn it, how could our party accept a scum like you?' Su Ming raised his middle finger. 'Come to work for me after the New Year, I guarantee that you will be immersed in the joy of labor for 20 hours out of 24 hours a day.' 'That's great,' Wang Hao slapped his thigh. 'I think now that the happiest thing in the world is labor.' You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 219. Su Ming had already made arrangements for Wang Hao. Dean Song also said that day that the reform would be officially started within 2 months after the New Year. At that time, the zoo would set up a company. Wang Hao was not very involved in animal matters, but he was familiar with the entertainment projects in the zoo. For example, boat trips, fish riding, and several paid attractions, souvenirs, feed sales, and other things can be managed in a unified and centralized manner. In addition to the original projects, the zoo is now famous and the scenery is good. Sometimes film and television companies come here to rent venues for filming. Su Ming feels that it is necessary to subdivide the industry and conduct refined and professional management. Because sometimes you have to deal with the government and people in various circles, Wang Hao is the most suitable. Most of the original employees in the zoo are ordinary people, and they are not as good as Wang Hao in this regard. After being busy for several days, he even went to the old boss's house. Su Ming went home for the new year. There were too many things to buy, and the Wrangler could not fit them all. He asked the old boss to borrow the zoo's Buick commercial vehicle. He actually forgot to say hello to Nangong Yan. It was not until Nangong Yan came in person and pointed at Su Ming and scolded him that Su Ming remembered. "It's not that I forgot you, but because you have always been in my heart, and I have long been accustomed to your existence." Su Ming covered his wallet and said affectionately. "Me too. So you should pay the bill." Nangong Yan shook a donkey bag. If a woman's anger can be solved by buying, it means that the problem is not big. Su Ming followed behind and said, "Didn't you see it said on the internet that donkey bags are out of date? Those who still buy donkey bags are all bitches." "That's right," Nangong Yan snapped her fingers, "then let's go to Hermes." "Su Ming!" Nangong Yan yelled fiercely, but in the end she didn't buy too many things. She just dragged Su Ming around for a whole day, and Su Ming's legs were almost thinner. After dealing with human affairs, Su Ming had to arrange the life of the animals during the Chinese New Year. Tigers, bears and other animals that were originally in the zoo don't need to worry too much. During the Chinese New Year, the keepers will arrange for duty to take care of these guys. It's mainly the batch he brought later. "Don't worry about your family of 3. Su Ming sat on the edge of the pool, rolled up his trouser legs, and put his legs in the constant temperature water. In the water were the 3 finless porpoises. The finless porpoise probably also wants to live in a wider wild, but the current conditions do not allow it. It is definitely not possible to release endangered animals such as finless porpoises directly into the wild. It is too dangerous, but if you say that you want to set up a large protected area for 3 finless porpoises, it is not realistic. The reservoir is not safe either. The area is too large. In addition to the contracted area, there are often people who come to go outing around its waters. Moreover, it is connected to the Yangtze River and the gates are opened every year to release water. Endangered animals like finless porpoises are fine if they are not discovered. Since they are discovered, they must be under strict protection. In fact, Su Ming thinks that they are mainly too lonely. If there are more finless porpoises to keep them company, it should be much better." 2 small porpoises stood up on the water, waving at Su Ming with their fins, but they were turning in circles. The big porpoise was quiet. Su Ming patted its head and said, "It would be great if we could find a male one, so that it can breed the next generation and the possibility of designating a protected area would be much greater." "Hey, if we can't find a porpoise, can we use a baiji dolphin?" Although baiji dolphins are also very rare, there are still artificial breeding and protection bases. If we think of a way, it shouldn't be too difficult to get a few to keep the porpoises company. The big porpoise didn't know if it understood, but it shook its head stupidly. After a few words, the giant salamander and Yangtze alligator behind it started to make a fuss again, and the aquarium was filled with the sound of bang bang bang. The Yangtze alligator was beaten up by Su Ming that day and was seriously injured, but fortunately, it didn't hurt its vital parts, and Su Ming used his mental power to heal it, and it soon recovered. Since it is also a national key protected animal, a national treasure of the first level, and its status is no lower than that of the giant salamander, the zoo arranged it in the aquarium, as a neighbor of the giant salamander, separated by tempered glass. The Yangtze alligator is also a rare animal. After a few days in the zoo, many tourists bought tickets to see it. They are reptiles that look similar, but the Yangtze alligator looks more ferocious and hideous. It is also a newcomer. The attention of tourists in the aquarium is all attracted by the Yangtze alligator. The zoo even put a huge photo of the Yangtze alligator in front of the aquarium to attract tourists. The giant salamander immediately felt neglected. Not only did this guy occupy its territory, but he also stole its limelight. How could it be? He was full of resentment and often yelled at the Yangtze alligator through the glass. Although the Yangtze alligator is considered to be docile among crocodiles, that is relative to crocodiles. Now that it was provoked by such a big, fleshy guy, it certainly couldn't stand it, and used its tail to violently slap the reinforced glass to protest, causing the aquarium to often echo with loud bangs. The giant salamander seemed to be smarter, and seeing that the Yangtze alligator couldn't break the glass, it had more to rely on, and its courage became stronger. These two were both old men who were old but strong, and had very bad tempers. After becoming neighbors, they disliked each other every day. When Su Ming came, he saw the giant salamander spraying water at the old alligator through the glass to show his contempt. "I said you two are quite old. Is this interesting?" Su Ming pointed at the giant salamander and said, "You just rely on the reinforced glass in the middle. If you put you together, can you beat the old crocodile?" The body size of the salamander is about the same as that of the alligator, but its attack power and defense power are outclassed by those of the alligator. In a real fight, the alligator can settle the fight with one bite. Creation confuses people. Although the giant salamander has a fighting heart, it is unfortunately not a fighting race by nature. The alligator is actually relatively docile and takes the sexual route, but God just gave it sharp teeth and a thick armor. Raising animals is like raising children. Su Ming sometimes has to play the role of a parent. He must protect him when he should protect him, and he must not be soft-hearted when he should criticize and punish him. After criticizing the giant salamander, he turned around and said to the alligator, "And you, don't be complacent. The baby fish can't do it to you, and you can't do it to me. If you don't bully it, I won't bully you. It's Chinese New Year, so you two should stay away for a few days. If someone takes advantage of my absence, break it into pieces the glass, big salamander, just wait to be eaten by the old crocodile, and old crocodile, just wait to be eaten by me." The old men didn't look at each other, and there was nothing he could do about it. The two of them together were older than his grandfather, so he could only pretend to be vicious and give them a few words of criticism and education. As for Huiya, Su Ming took him back to the wolf house. "We haven't seen each other for a few months. Gray Fang is almost the same size as the Wolf King." The two generations of Wolf Kings did not show too much intimacy. After Gray Fang entered the cage, he looked at each other with the Wolf King and his wife, and then they lay down separately. Resting in the nest, like a stranger. But thinking about it on the other hand, Huiya is a male wolf that is about to reach adulthood. It is definitely a rare tenderness for the Wolf King and his wife to let him enter the cage and even lie down in the den. Generally, for wolves in the wild, even if they are biological, after the wolf pup reaches adulthood, the Wolf King will not allow it to approach his territory, let alone enter his den. It's Chinese New Year, spend time with your parents. After the Chinese New Year, you can go play in the back mountain. Su Ming waved to Huiya outside the cage. Huiya turned his head away from Su Ming with disdain. The Wolf King grinned at Su, a gesture of thanks, but it was very scary, as if he wanted to eat Su Ming. Beiwa Valley is too far away, so I didn't go there. I asked Argoza to fly back and forth to greet the two queen bees. When Argoza came back, he brought a gift from the queen bee, a large bucket of the best royal jelly. It's not a small bucket, it's a big iron bucket used to hold oil. Just to transport this big bucket of royal jelly, tens of thousands of bees and wasps were used, taking turns along the way, tossing the little bees and wasps quite hard. On the way those bees came, they met the old Monkey King and Xiao Kong, who were surveying the terrain in the back mountain, looking for a suitable place for brewing wine. So many bees buzzed over, startling the monkey father and son, and almost caused an accidental injury. After the monkey master went back to the zoo twice, he danced in front of Su Ming and made chittering gestures for a long time to show that he was greatly frightened. Su Ming laughed and got more than 100 kilograms of bananas from the zoo warehouse for them. After being frightened, the father and son went away laughing and joking, their tails erect as high as a flagpole. The crocodile gar passed through the underwater channel and swam to the Shuaxi Lake to celebrate the new year. The concentration of Tai Sui water here is the highest, which is good for their growth and the future of the baby crocodile gar. After half a year of work, it is time to enjoy special treatment. Big Head and the snapping turtle were too big to fit through the underwater passage, so Su Ming held Big Head in his arms and sat with his legs on the back of the snapping turtle, which looked like a round table. The snapping turtle crawled back into the small lake in the waterside pavilion. The painting style is full of local flavor, like a combination of a fat boy who is more than every year and a tortoise. Wherever he passes, many tourists gather around him and want to take photos. It was a pity that the back of the snapping turtle was so jagged and barbed that it hurt Su Ming's buttocks after just sitting for a while. Is it time for you to give birth? In the waterside pavilion, Su Ming rubbed the head of a little white cat. The little guy's belly is bulging, and he has been lazy all day long and refuses to move. He lies in his nest from morning to night. If I count the days, I will give birth to a kitten in just half a month. Several other cats gathered around, staring curiously at the white cat's belly, stretching out their furry little fleshy paws to touch it gently. It seems that they are a group of inexperienced guys. When the white cat gives birth to a baby, it is impossible to expect them to help. Dahe squatted aside obediently, waiting for Su Ming's decision. In this case, Xiaobai, come home with me. I can take care of them if they are born. Dahe, you take them with you and they will stay at the waterside pavilion during the Chinese New Year. They are not allowed to bite the wires or play with the sockets. Dahe meowed and shook his tail to show that he understood. He still looked a little worried and secretly glanced at the little white cat's belly. As a gay man, if you want to watch it, just watch it openly, and no one will hold you accountable. Su Ming laughed. It was finally the 28th of the new year. Su Ming made a big purchase. A business car with 8 people in 3 rows. The back 2 rows were almost filled with various New Year gifts. Su Ming brought the new money from his account with him. Su Meng was called and Hai Dongqing was released from the bird garden. You fly first. Su Ming untied the small iron chain on Hai Dongqing's leg and raised his arm slightly. Hai Dongqing used his arm to lend a little support, and his wings soared into the air, and he rushed in the blink of an eye. In the sky, only a small black spot can be seen on the ground. Take me. Take me. I'm going to. I'm going to. The parrot sisters gave up and grabbed the cage, screaming at Su Ming from next door. You can't go with me. Don't worry, I've prepared delicious food for you. Su Ming took out several large bags of various nuts from his backpack, including dozens of kilograms of pistachios, small walnuts, etc., and put them into the parrot cage. The floor of the birdhouse was immediately filled with various nuts. The 2 parrots flapped their wings and jumped down, diving into the food. This is what the so-called wine pool and meat forest is like. After finishing all this, Su Ming said hello to Sister Tong, took Su Meng, drove out of the zoo and drove towards his hometown. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 220. This time when Su Ming went home, he did not bring any other animals, only Xiaobai and Hai Dongqing. Needless to say, Xiaobai was naturally taken care of with a big belly, although he knew that Xiaobai could give birth to a baby independently without him. But Su Ming still did not feel at ease to leave it in the zoo. With the ability of soul attachment, Hai Dongqing became a very important partner. Among the many animals at present, its vision is the strongest. At an altitude of more than 1,000 meters, it can clearly see a little mouse on the ground. And because it can fly, it is the most convenient to take it out, but it is also easy to arouse suspicion. In the air, Hai Dongqing is almost invincible, and there is no problem with its own safety. Unlike Urguzu, he has to beware of some natural enemies, birds, especially when going to the mountains. Urguzu's situation is actually quite dangerous. If there is really an emergency, Hai Dongqing's own combat effectiveness should not be ignored. It is not a problem to deal with an adult, besides, it is extremely fast, and it is also suitable for conveying messages and tipping off. Su Ming couldn't call the zoo and tell the person who answered the phone, "Please let Gozi, the wasp in my room, answer the phone." In the air, a Saker falcon spread its wings and flew. On the highway below, Su Ming and Su Meng drove a commercial vehicle full of New Year's goods and gifts, leaving Yangchuan City and heading to their hometown. By attaching a trace of spiritual power to the Saker falcon, the Saker falcon flew in the air. Su Ming could completely grasp any movement within a radius of several kilometers, turning into a super biological radar. Of course, there is nothing perfect in the world. Su Ming was sitting in the car, but he felt a gust of wind blowing across his face, scratching his skin like a knife, and he was very uncomfortable. In less than half a minute, he couldn't open his eyes, and tears kept flowing out. The biggest feature of the soul attaching ability is that although it will not be physically harmed, it will have the same physiological feelings as the animal that is attached. Saker falcons have long been accustomed to flying at an altitude of thousands of meters. Their eyeballs are not constructed the same way as humans, so they are not afraid of the wind. But Su Ming is not. After playing for a while, Su Ming couldn't stand it anymore and took back his mental strength. "Su Ming, I'm going to talk to you seriously about something now," Su Ming said while driving. He said very seriously, but his face didn't look serious at all, as if he couldn't help laughing. Su Ming nodded vigorously, looked at Su Ming seriously, and waited for him to speak. Be serious, Su Ming said to himself in his heart, and then asked, "What do you think of Nurse Xiaohu?" Su Ming gave a thumbs up without hesitation and nodded, he. "What about letting her be your wife?" Su Ming asked again. This time, Su Ming did not answer. He thought for a long time with his eyes wide open, showing a confused expression, nodded uncertainly, then shook his head, nodded again, and shook his head again, repeating it several times in a row. Finally, he leaned back on the car seat in frustration, lowered his head and kept silent. After coming to the world with Su Ming for so long, Su Ming gradually understood that a wife is not just for giving birth to children. In the future, they will have to live together and experience many things together that he does not understand yet. Seeing Su Ming like this, Su Ming also understood about 70%. Su Ming has a good impression of Xiaohu, at least not a bad impression, but it is too early to talk about marriage, and even too early to fall in love. Don't think too much, just let it go. Su Ming said something a bit convoluted to himself. When you can be sure whether you are willing to spend your life with a woman, then you can naturally find a woman to spend your life with. Moxie County is 160 kilometers away from Yangchuan City. The county has a county seat plus 15 townships and several villages with a total population of 66,000. The entire county is in the mountains, remote, inconvenient transportation, and even the amount of arable land is very small, and there are no special industries. Therefore, Moxie County has been one of the poorest counties in the province for many years, and has been the focus of poverty alleviation every year. When the Japanese invaded China, they occupied all the cities around Moxie County, but did not attack Moxie County. On the one hand, it was because Moxie County was too small and remote at that time, and it might not even exist on the map. On the other hand, it was also because it was difficult for Japanese personnel and weapons, especially heavy weapons, to enter the mountains. Year after year, poverty alleviation has been given, but Moxie County has become poorer and poorer. Even in the county seat, the average monthly income per capita is probably less than 1,500 yuan, and the townships below are even poorer. Su Ming drove off the national highway and onto the winding mountain road. After driving for 2 or 3 hours on the steep road, he finally arrived at the county seat of Moxie County, which is located in a large mountain valley. The county seat has hardly changed since he left. The old city is about the same size as a commercial district in Yangchuan City. There are 7 or 8 main roads, and both sides are very old 2 or 3-story buildings. A 5-story Carrefour supermarket has become the landmark building of the county seat. The only difference is that several residential communities have been newly built around the county seat, and dozens of more than 10-story residential buildings have sprung up. However, when driving past the gates of these communities, they are all deserted, and it doesn't look like anyone lives inside. Su Ming's home is not in the county seat, but in Suntown, about 20 kilometers away from the county seat, which can be regarded as deep in the mountains. Shenzhen is called a town, but it is actually a larger village. There are less than 100 households scattered at the foot of the mountain. The town is basically still in a very primitive self-sufficient state. People rely on the little land they have opened up on the mountain to live a simple life of working from sunrise to sunset. Relying on the mountain to eat the mountain, relying on the water to eat the water, the residents of Shenzhen also have other sources of income. Every autumn, there will be large areas of wild walnuts in the mountains that mature. In winter, there are winter bamboo shoots everywhere underground, and there are many other economic plants. This is the wealth given to mankind by nature. As long as you are not lazy, you can go to the mountains to pick walnuts and bamboo shoots and sell them in the county. You can also earn thousands of yuan a year to supplement your family income. The business car went down the mountain along the winding mountain road, and a large area of residential houses built on the mountain appeared in front of us. Finally, we arrived home. Go to the nearby mountains to play by yourself, and be careful. Su Ming said hello to He Dongking, then lightly stepped on the accelerator and slowly drove into Shenzhen. The new year is coming soon. Most of the people who work outside the town have returned one after another. It is quite lively, with people coming and going like a market. A clothing store and a beauty salon on the roadside play popular songs with loudspeakers. There are all kinds of small stalls on the street, selling fireworks, firecrackers, couplets, and other New Year goods. The Buick GL8 that Suke borrowed from the zoo is not a good car. It is only good in volume, but it is a rare high-end car in Suntown. I remember that the mayor's car is Wuling Hongguang. When he drove slowly through the only street in the town, a large group of children followed behind and shouted, "Big Buick! Big Buick!" Su Ming felt a little emotional. When he didn't leave the mountains, the only car logo he knew was Jeep, because the Jeep logo is the English word Jeep. At that time, he didn't even know what the Mercedes-Benz logo looked like. He always thought that hunky was Mercedes-Benz. As the living standard gradually improves, the mountains inevitably have more contact with the outside world. Even these 7 or 8-year-old children can recognize Buick. It has to be admitted that although the gap between the rich and the poor has widened, the lives of ordinary people have become better day by day. The car slowly stopped in front of a somewhat remote 2-story building. This kind of self-built 2-story building can be seen everywhere in the town. The vermilion wooden door has become mottled due to the erosion of time, and the original color can't be seen. The walls are also very simple gray and white, and the red bricks inside are exposed in many places. A row of dried bacon and sausages are hung under the eaves. An old yellow dog in the town is lying not far away, lazily basking in the sun. I'm home. Looking at the door, Su Ming couldn't help but feel a little warm in his heart. The folks in Suntown are simple and honest. The gate is not locked, just half closed. I got off the car and pushed the door open. There was only a large wooden table and a few chairs in the large hall. There were New Year paintings of the God of Wealth on the wall, a few thermos bottles, and a very old large-bottomed color TV. There was no furniture. No one lived on the first floor of Su Ming's house. He looked into a small room next to it. Inside was the familiar granary. A large round barrel with a height of 1 person and a diameter of more than 1 meter was surrounded by bamboo strips. It was filled with rice that had not yet been threshed. There was a small yard at the back. Now the town uses biogas. The kitchen is at the back. Before entering the yard, I could smell the aroma of meat from the kitchen. Hearing someone outside, a middle-aged woman with gray hair came out of the kitchen. The woman looked a little old, and wrinkles inevitably appeared on her face, but she was in very good spirits. Even though she was wearing an apron and dressed like a mountain woman, she had an air of bookishness that could not be concealed. "Mom, I'm back," Su Ming almost cried when he shouted. "It's good to be back, it's good to be back." Mother Sue's eyes were also a little red, and she reached out to rub Su Ming's head like a child. But Su Ming has grown up, taller than when he was in college. He naturally lowered his head, but Mother Sue's hand stopped on his face, gently stroking it twice, and said with a smile, "Son is grown up, you can't pat your head like a child anymore. No matter how old you are still my mother." Su Ming hugged his mother's arm, sniffed into the kitchen, and asked with a smile, "What's burning? It smells so good." "Hurry up, wash your hands, I made your favorite bamboo shoots and braised pork, wash your hands and eat." When my mother was young, she was also from a big city. She met my father during the movement to go to the countryside. Because my grandfather's family was a big landlord and a reactionary warlord before liberation, they were always criticized and struggled against. Until the third plenary session of the 11th Central Committee, the hat was not taken off because his grandfather's class background was indeed bad and it was not a false case. Therefore, my mother could not return to the city, so she followed my father to settle down in Moxie County, her hometown, and lived there for most of her life. In the past, Wang Hao often joked with Su Ming, saying that my family had revolutionized your family. If there had been no liberation, Su Ming's grandfather would have been a Huangpu graduate and a big landlord, while Wang Hao's grandfather would have been a serious poor peasant. "Mom, I brought a friend back," Su Ming said while washing his hands with a smile. Mother Su was stunned at first, then she was happy and said angrily, "Why didn't you tell me that you brought a girlfriend back earlier? I cook all the oily and meaty food you like to eat, and the girls in the city can't get used to it. Don't break up with you after a meal, then I will be guilty." "Mom, it's not a girl, it's a boy," Su Ming said.